Helen and the Well of Whispers. In a valley nestled between sleepy green hills, a strange quiet had fallen over the entire land. It wasn't the peaceful, gentle quiet of a snoozing afternoon, but a thick, heavy silence that seemed to press down on everything. This unusual stillness muffled all potential laughter and completely swallowed any songs before they could even begin. The world felt like it was holding its breath. The colors of the world seemed incredibly shy too, as if they were hiding from view. It was as if the brilliant, dazzling blue of the sky and the cheerful, bright yellow of the buttercups had pulled a dusty gray blanket over themselves. The grown-ups in the valley had a name for this phenomenon. They simply called it the Great Hush. It was a time of quietness and faded beauty. The grown-ups moved through their days like silent shadows, their faces pale and their eyes distant and unfocused. They were always trying to remember a time when the world was loud and bright with energy and life. They would often stare off into space, their minds searching for the memories of sounds and colors that had long since vanished. It was a struggle they faced every single day. But in this quiet world lived a little girl named Helen, who was a very special child. Helen had been born directly into the hush, so she didn't miss the sounds and colors she had never known. For her, the world was not a place of sights and sounds, but a wonderful place of feelings. She experienced everything around her in a unique and personal way. She knew the sun was out and shining not by its brilliant brightness, but by the gentle, comforting warmth it left upon her cheeks. She knew a friend was happy and excited not by their wide smile, but by the light, quick patter of their footsteps on the earth. Her entire world was a secret language of touch and vibration. It was a beautiful story told through the soles of her bare feet. One day, while she was walking at the very edge of the whispering woods, a place the other children always avoided, Helen felt something entirely new. It was a deep, steady, thrumming sensation in the ground directly beneath her feet. This vibration felt like a giant, sleeping heartbeat, pulsing slowly and rhythmically. It was a feeling as warm as honey and as steady as a distant star. Curiosity, a feeling that was bright and sharp even in the middle of the great hush, pulled her forward into the woods. Deeper and deeper into the mysterious forest she went, carefully following the strange vibration. With every single step she took, the unique feeling grew stronger and more distinct. It was as if the forest itself was calling out to her, guiding her path. She finally came to a sun-dappled clearing, and in its very center stood a magnificent tree unlike any she had ever felt before. It was absolutely enormous, with powerful roots as thick as sleeping dragons that buckled the earth all around it. The tree commanded the clearing with its ancient and powerful presence. It was a truly breathtaking sight to behold. Its bark wasn't rough and scratchy like other trees. It felt incredibly smooth and warm to the touch. The entire tree shimmered with a faint silvery light that pulsed gently in perfect time with the heartbeat she felt in the ground. Helen reached out a tentative, curious hand and placed it very gently on the massive trunk. She held her breath in anticipation. The very moment her palm touched the warm bark, a powerful jolt of understanding, as clear as a bell she'd never heard, shot up her arm. It wasn't a sound, but a complete story told entirely in feelings. She felt the slow, patient push of a single root moving through the deep soil. She felt the joyful stretch of a new leaf unfurling to greet the morning sun. She even felt the gentle, quiet sadness of a single leaf letting go of its branch in the autumn. The great tree was talking to her, not with any words, but with its very life force. It was sharing its entire existence, its memories, and its feelings directly with her. This was a language far older and deeper than any spoken word. It was the language of being. Every single day, Helen returned to the great shimmering tree, her new and ancient friend. She learned its name was Elderwood, a name that felt as old as the forest itself. She would sit with her back against its warm trunk for hours at a time, learning the complex language of the silent world. Elderwood became her wisest and most patient teacher. Elderwood taught her how to feel the subtle difference between the quick scamper of a squirrel and the slow, deliberate crawl of a beetle. It taught her to feel the mood of the sky by the changing pressure of the air on her skin. The world, which had once seemed so simple, began to open up like a giant, magical storybook. It was full of texture, temperature, and hidden rhythms. The great hush was still there, a blanket of silence over the valley. But for Helen, the world was no longer silent at all. It was singing a grand and beautiful symphony of touch, a constant flow of information and feeling. She had discovered a richness that no one else knew existed. The world was alive and communicating with her in every moment. One quiet afternoon, Elderwood sent a completely new feeling pulsing through its extensive roots, a feeling of great urgency and of a clear purpose. It was a map, a distinct path of vibrations leading her even deeper into the woods than she had ever gone before. Trusting her ancient and wise friend, Helen immediately got up to follow the thrumming trail. The path led her to a small, moss-covered circle of ancient stones hidden away in a secluded part of the forest. In the very middle of this stone circle was an old well, built so long ago that it seemed a part of the landscape itself. The water at the bottom was so perfectly still and dark, it looked like a piece of the night sky had fallen to earth. A clear message pulsed up from the ground, a gentle nudge from Elderwood, which was now miles away. Reach. Helen knelt at the edge of the well, feeling the ancient power. The air around it felt different, ancient and full of deep secrets. She carefully lowered the old wooden bucket, the rope sighing softly, one of the few sounds the hush couldn't completely swallow. When the bucket was finally full, she raised it with all her might, her heart thumping a fast, excited rhythm against her ribs. She carefully set the bucket on the stone edge and dipped her fingers into the cool, mysterious water. It was more than just water. She could feel that instantly. It felt like she was touching liquid starlight. It was liquid memory. The moment the magical water touched her skin, a complete story exploded in her mind, a story made of pure, unfiltered feeling. She felt the bubbly, fizzy feeling of laughter bubbling up from her toes. She felt the warm, soaring feeling of a beautiful song lifting her spirit. She felt the dazzling, brilliant feeling of 1,000 colors bursting in a glorious sunset. These were the very things the great hush had stolen from the world so long ago. The well didn't just hold water, it held everything the world had forgotten. She splashed the water on her face, and for a single breathtaking moment, the dusty blanket over the world seemed to lift entirely. She saw a flash of brilliant green in the moss, and a flicker of deep blue in the well water. She even heard the faint ghost of a bird's chirp, a sound she had never known before. Then, just as quickly as it came, it was gone, and the heavy hush settled back into place. But now, Helen knew the truth. She knew what was missing from her world, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that the ancient well was the key to getting it all back. She quickly filled a small flask she carried with the magical well water and ran back towards her village, her bare feet barely seeming to touch the ground. She found her best friend, a boy named Thomas, sitting listlessly on his porch steps, staring into space. She couldn't explain what she'd found with words, for they had no words for such magnificent things. So, instead of trying to use words, she used the special language that Elderwood had taught her. She gently took Thomas's hand in her own. Then, with great care, she let a single, shimmering drop of the well water fall from her flask onto his open palm. His eyes, which had been so dull and distant, suddenly widened in surprise. He felt the magic instantly. She then used her finger to tap a specific rhythm on his skin, the bubbly, fizzy rhythm of laughter that she had felt from the water. A tiny smile, the first real smile anyone had seen in many, many years, touched Thomas's lips. He didn't know why, but he understood the feeling perfectly. He understood the message of joy she was sharing. Together, the two friends went from house to house throughout the quiet village. They didn't speak a single word to anyone. They simply shared a tiny drop of the magical water and then told a story through the language of touch. A quick tap-tap-tapping that meant sunshine. A long, slow flowing stroke that meant river. A light, dancing flutter that meant music. With each and every person they touched, a little more of the lost memory returned to the village. A mother, after feeling the touch story of a lullaby, began to hum the forgotten tune softly to herself. A father, feeling the rhythm of a festival, found his feet unconsciously tapping a forgotten dance on the wooden floor. Hope was beginning to spread. Soon, a small procession of villagers, all holding hands in a long chain, followed Helen and Thomas back through the whispering woods. They moved with a completely new energy, a spark of hope lighting their way through the muted forest. When they finally reached the Well of Whispers, Helen motioned for them all to form a large circle around the ancient stones. She took Thomas's hand, and he took the hand of his neighbor, and so on, until everyone was connected. They formed a living chain of hope around the ancient stones of the well. Helen lowered the bucket one last time and raised it, brimming with the shimmering liquid memory. She started by pouring a little into Thomas's waiting, outstretched hands. The feeling of pure joy, the incredible story of the living world rushed into him from the water. He gasped, and as he held his neighbor's hand, the feeling flowed from him into them. From them, it flowed to the next person, a powerful ripple of wonder passing through the entire circle. It flowed from person to person, growing stronger with each link in the chain. And then, something truly incredible and magical happened. A single, Shared gasp of pure wonder rose from the crowd of villagers, and this time it had a sound. It was soft at first, but it was unmistakably there. Then a woman laughed, a real clear laugh that sounded like beautiful bells. A child shouted with pure, unrestrained glee. The great hush shattered into a million pieces. Like a giant pane of glass breaking, the heavy silence cracked and fell away completely. Sound rushed back into the world, the gentle rustle of leaves, the happy chirping of crickets, the joyful cries of the villagers. And with the sound came the color. The sky blazed a brilliant blue, and the trees popped into 100 shades of green. The villagers' own clothes seemed to glow with rediscovered reds and yellows and purples. The world was awake again, more vibrant and beautiful than they had ever remembered. They stood there for a long time, laughing and crying, listening to the glorious symphony of the world. And in the middle of it all stood Helen, smiling a smile that held the wisdom of silence and the joy of a song finally sung.